Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast session today. And I am so excited to have Stephanie with us today. If you guys were in the Autoimmune Recovery Summit, you would have met Stephanie already. And I am just excited to have you today. And what we're going to talk about is really, really timely. It's very specific to this time of year. And what do we do in the holiday season? How do we maintain our wellness and not get like, oh my gosh, there's an extra five. Whoops, that was an extra 10. Or get to the place where we can't sleep or we're feeling anxious. So, we're going to really work through some of the tips and tricks that Stephanie shares with her audience. And yeah, let's get started. Stephanie, would you like to introduce yourself again to our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here, Melissa. And I'm very excited to be able to chat with you all. And my name is Stephanie Pazniokis. It rhymes with hocus pocus. So if you see the scary looking last name, it's not so scary once you get to know it. Um, and yeah, I am a health and wellness coach. I'm also a certified culinary nutrition expert, and I really love to focus on energy, physical energy, and inflammation. And those are two areas because, of course, if you've got inflammation, you don't have that physical energy, right? And lots of things just sort of break in our body. They don't work ideally, right? They're just sort of a little bit, it's a little bit crunchy there, a little bit of gear, wrenches in the gears here and there, and things just don't run smoothly, and we feel it, right? So I really love focusing on a really holistic approach to health because lots of things cause inflammation. It's not just food. A lot of people think that health is about food or movement. It's both one of those or both. And it's just so much more, which is actually quite encouraging, I find, because you can start in a number of different places and realize immediate benefits, and your quality of life, how you experience life can change really quickly.
I love
Yeah.
that. And it sounds so doable when you say it that way.
It is. It's very doable. And I think the way I work with my clients is probably very similar for you is really it's not about here's this giant plan, go follow it. And it doesn't make any sense, right? Because for some people, they're going to need to start in one place, and for others, it's another place. And everybody's first step is going to look different because and it's really a first step. There are programs off the shelf out there that sound so exciting and sexy, like Whole 30, right? For 30 days, do this thing. And by the way, you're changing 14 things, learn how to cook all over again, buy all new food, get rid of it, and then figure out how to get it. You have to you can't just jump in because it's so overwhelming that the stress of doing it can actually, you know, overshadow some of those benefits you may be getting, right? And so I love the concept of whole. I love what it talks about. I think it's really fantastic. And if I were to implement it with somebody, it would be 14 weeks
Yeah.
because you want to know that for each change that you're making, you want to I'm a scientist by background. I don't know if anybody remembers that or if you got to see me during the Autoimmune Summit. I'm a neuroscientist, and my undergraduate was psychobiology and biochemistry. My master's is in neuroscience. I spent many years in between the lab and in the specialty life science, industry in anatomy and physiology as well. Just so many things. So science is my love. And one of the big rules in science is you change one variable at a time.
Exactly.
You have a
Not
constant, you change
50.
one variable, not 50. But from a neuroscience perspective, when we try to change too much at a time, our brain goes into a fear response, whether you feel like it should be or not, whether you're consciously afraid of something or not. When your brain is actually trying to change multiple neuronal connections and learn lots of new things all at once, it doesn't just feel overwhelming. It actually is physiologically overwhelming. And we get tired. And then what do we often do? We often don't get enough sleep in the first place. So we're not giving our brains time to even process all that and make the changes they need, right? And of course, lack of sleep and high stress all increase inflammation, right? If it all comes back to inflammation and energy, and inflammation blocks your ability to create the energy your body needs to run like a car that's out of gas, right? I mean, like, I don't know, an overheated engine, if you will. It can't go very far like that. So, it's really to me, that's really the whole thing. And that's really what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the holidays because at this time of year, we double our workload and half our sleep.
Right?
And yet we're trying to have fun,
Yeah.
right? Do you know what I hear from almost every single one of the people that I survey in my world during this time of year is that they're stressed and they've got so much to do. They end up sleeping less. They're just trying to get all of these things done. And then they look back in January 2nd and are disappointed.
Yeah.
We go in before Thanksgiving, before the holidays, and it doesn't matter what holidays and what part of the world you're from and what culture. All cultures have holidays this time of year and celebrations this time of year. And so whatever that looks like for you, often it involves, there's a lot of happy things in our mind, especially if we were celebrating them as children, we have in our mind this this idealistic view. And we have all of these like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and it's going to feel great and everybody's going to have such a great time and nobody's going to be human around me because we're all going to be this utopian ideal of, perfection, right? That doesn't exist. So we go in with these expectations and then it falls flat and then we're trying to make everything happen in our own power and we exhaust ourselves emotionally and mentally and physically. And if we are in an autoimmune state, I know a lot of your community suffers from autoimmune. Um, oh my goodness, do you just feel like you got to stay in bed all day? And so, and the recovery is tougher. Maybe your pain goes up, all kinds of things happen. And then you get disappointed that you can't do the things that you want to do, even what list that is. And so we end up sabotaging our joy for this idyllic perfection. And what I've just recently done, I've been doing this for a couple of years now with my community, is what I call a holy, WHOLLY, healthy and happy holiday workshop. And it's just 5 half-hour, little bits over 5 days. And we walk through the 5 things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And um, and I got to tell you that the feedback that I get from this is I had the best holiday ever. I had so much fun. I didn't do these things before that I used to always do that I hate. You get really into it. And it starts with the very first thing, which is really reflecting on what was and what is to be. What has it always been in the past? What do you expect? What are your favorite traditions? First of all, write down all the things you love. Like, absolutely start there. Start with everything that you love. What are your favorite things about the holidays, right? Then think about what happened in the past. Reflect a little bit, because we're sitting here saying, hey, it doesn't go the way I want. I'm an adult now, and boy, behind the curtain isn't as pretty as on the side that I was as a kid, right? For many people. And you get to say, well, do I have regrets? Was I lonely? Um, is it very painful for me? uh did I end up doing so much that I ended up getting sick halfway through and I spent the last 2 weeks of the, I just know that the last 2 weeks of every year I'm sick as a dog in bed every single time, right? Or you end up having the holiday meal or holiday dinner or holiday celebration and you find yourself running around the whole entire time and you never got to say hi to your favorite people that you were so looking forward to seeing because you were so busy. And so you get to look at what happened that you wish hadn't happened, what didn't happen that you wish had happened, and it's not about, focusing on the negative or being a Debbie Downer. It's really about let's gather data, right? I like to think about it as let's just gather some data. What's the data? Here's all the stuff that I really love and look forward to. Here's the stuff that didn't go so well. I learned something. And if I'm smart, I can look over the last 5 years and say, wow, some of this needs to get trimmed out because it isn't serving anybody. And if I'm really unhappy, guess what? The people around me are too. They're not as, that they want, if I'm hosting at my house they want me to be with them and happy and doing things. And if they see me kind of frustrated off to the side and getting everything out and very serious and everything, it dampens that for them too, because they're aware. And then they come up to you and they say things like, "Are you sure there isn't anything I could do? Or is anything wrong? Is everything okay?" And if they're coming to you like that, then you're affecting them. They're having, so um, so we want to understand what are those things, right? So my favorite example is a couple years ago, I was hosting Thanksgiving, and my husband just really dropped the ball at reading my mind. I don't know why he hasn't really perfected this clairvoyance thing and ESP thing or whatever, like being able to read my mind. He should. So he should know exactly all of those things I expect him to do to help me. No. Okay, but the bottom line is I'd get so jealous. He's out there talking to everybody. He's having a great time. And I am getting this done and that done and asking, making sure I'm handing out food, like I'm doing all this stuff. Now, that isn't to say he didn't really, he rearranges the house, he does the table setting, he has in his mind his jobs. And then it's like, well, honey, go get the pies, go get the this, go get the. And I have to interrupt him. And then I'm like, where's John? And I was just like, I don't like that. I don't like that. And so last year, when I hosted Thanksgiving, I had a conversation with my husband. We talked. And I said, here's what I'm hoping you can help me with. And then if he said, well, why don't you, not do that, and let's just let people do it this way. And I spent, I spread out, I changed how I made all the food. I used to watch my mom make all the food all at once. That doesn't work. I do 3 days ahead of time, 2 days ahead of time, the day before, and then the day of. By the time the day of comes, I almost have nothing left to cook. It's just, warming it up and doing the final thing and whatever. And so that worked out really well. But what was wonderful is that first year that I did it that way, I had such a great time. I was able to sit down and talk to people, makes the rounds, and my husband noticed. And so did his mom. She's like, "Oh, it just seemed so much more relaxed." Everybody noticed it. And I noticed it. And guess what? It was a much healthier holiday for me for that, right? I was able to, manage expectations. And we're really going to talk about that when I get to point number 3. But understanding what you want your holiday to be, and then identifying your values. What are your 4 biggest values? What are the things that matter most to you in the world? These are the things that on your deathbed, they're going to matter to you. They're not, whether or not you forgot to brine the turkey in time is not going to be something you worry about on your deathbed. I promise. Like, I hope. I hope it's not. But but understand, at this first step is also understand what are your top values, because those are the guiding North Star that all the other to-do things and that you want to add to the holiday are all going to match up to that. You're going to say, where is this here? Right? We're going to talk about that on number 5. So the second day, and the second thing I like to talk about is finding a healthy balance, right? So a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I gained so much weight during the holidays. It's a massive food festival. And we all have different food personalities going into it. Some people say, that's it. This is my license to absolutely go crazy and I don't care. And then they go crazy and they don't care until January. And then you have people that, you know, care a lot, and they're trying to be good, and so they're starving themselves most of the day, and they go to these things and they eat a whole bunch of stuff, and but they're feeling guilty about it. They can't even enjoy themselves because they feel bad about doing the thing, and that's not healthy either. And so really it all comes down to a balance and intention, right? So what do you want it to be? We have lots of different things we're going to. You can say, hey, for these 2 bigger events where everybody's making, some pies or cookies, I'm gonna have a little bit of a few things. I'm not gonna have a lot. And then maybe other things that you have less control over what the food is. Maybe it's at your place of faith that is having a big bazaar or something like that. And there's all this kinds of crazy food. Most of the time I go to those, I've already eaten ahead of time and I really don't eat at them. I choose at those times to be social instead and to really connect with people. That's one of my big values. Now I'm a foodie. I'm all about really good food, but I get to pick and choose when I'm going to, when my main meal is going to be. And what a lot of times I try to do is just have a really healthy, nutrient dense, food ahead of time before some of those, where I know that the options there aren't going to serve me as well, that I know they're going to be more inflammatory, and I want to, then what I do is I have something ahead of time so I don't go in super hungry. And then I get to then I'm able to keep my head on my shoulders. And if I want to pick at something or try something, I can. Like, and I don't ever feel bad about whatever decision I make. I just have an intention going in, right? And decide, well, that's the intention I have. And so if my intention going in is, this is the one day a year that I'm just going to do whatever, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. Now, what I also recommend, my second big tip there is really to help you stay, keep balanced, is really pay attention to uh how you're feeling, eating slowly and putting your fork down, chewing your food and savoring it. Savor the flavors, enjoy it, and talk to people. Be social. That's really the French paradox, is that they're eating slowly and they're talking to people and they're enjoying their time, right? Then just pay attention to when you no longer feel hungry. You don't have to wait till you're stuffed. You might have been called a turkey before in your life, but you aren't one. So you don't have to stuff yourself. You can eat until you're just satisfied and then say, I'm good here. And again, that's an intention going in. I'm good. I'm, I grew up hungry. And so for me, seeing a buffet when I was younger was both anxiety producing and a binge thing. Like if I was at a restaurant, it was anxiety because I'm like, I might never ever get a chance to do this again. What if I make the wrong choice? And then if I was at a buffet, I would eat so much that I would literally get just about sick because I don't know when I'm ever going to see this again. So this idea, letting go of that scarcity thing was a big thing for me. It's like, okay, I'm going to, uh, you know, be fine with just taking a little. I will always have another opportunity to enjoy myself, and I get to just keep my head. So that healthy balance there is really, you get to just decide how often and when and with what you'd like to indulge, and let the guilt go
Yeah.
one way or another. Because the truth of the matter is, between Thanksgiving and the New Year's holiday, the average amount of weight gained is 1 to 2 pounds. Now it's 7 to 10 over the entire winter season. So you got to think to yourself, well, what is the thing that I'm doing most of the time, right? What am I doing and how am I being? And so many other things go into that part, that we don't even have time to get into today. But food is just a small part. So you get to be intentional about it.
Right.
Um, yeah. I don't know. Do you find that for yourself?
Pardon me. Yeah. And I love what you're sharing about really setting your intention about what are your important things? Like what do you really want to happen? And it was making me think of like we have a blended family.
Mhm.
And so there's all of the kids and then their better halves come in and it's just like, I don't want to be stuck in the kitchen doing all the things and really understanding like what do I want this to look like? What feels good and what's going to be good for everybody else?
hmm And a lot of times, when it comes to the healthy portion of it, you get to say, well, I'm going to bring a dish that I know works for me to this thing. You
Mhm.
get to call ahead of time if you have a food sensitivity for things that you can't
So,
eat. Say, hey, what's on the menu? And is there an option for this or should I bring this? You get to ask, like, just don't, it's okay, communicate. And there's so many things that you can do. And again, planning, cooking ahead of time, if you know you're going to have a really really busy day, make sure you have some nice portable healthy snacks with you so that you don't find yourself like really getting ready to gnaw your arm off your body because you're so hungry that you have to go to a drive-through or something, right? There's lots of things like that. um but yeah, absolutely. And then the third thing is really the happy balance. And so we've talked about, what do we want things to look like? What do we want to be like? What's our data? Collecting data. What are my values? Okay, where are my values and feelings around food? Okay, now where is my, what does the happy balance come from? And this really has to do with people. So it has to do with our relationships with other people, but overall, it really has to do with expectations. We have expectations of ourselves. We have expectations of others. We have expectations from others onto us. And then we have, um, a circumstantial expectation, like I want the holidays to look this way. We have a certain amount of control over all of those. On ourselves, we have 100% control over the expectation of ourselves. We tend to hold ourselves to a bar we wouldn't hold anybody else to. And so it's so important to be realistic with yourself and say, does this make sense? Is this necessary? Is this expectation upholding one of my core values? Is it harming my ability? Is it stealing my joy? Am I getting resentful because I'm holding myself to this and nobody's helping me? Right? Um, right. I feel like that's really important. I have always had these, like, if you're a perfectionist, if you're a workaholic perfectionist people pleaser, then this is where you're going to struggle the most. Is this high expectation of yourself. And so being able to give yourself permission to say, I don't have to do all of those things this year because they've just left me sick and tired and miserable in the past. What is the bare minimum? What are the things that light me up the most? What are the things that I feel are most important? And just recalibrating those self expectations. And a lot of times, if we do that, those ones that are closest to us that we want to help us, we have these crazy expectations of them, like I did of my husband that I didn't tell him about for so many years. So the most important thing there is communicating those to other people. Do they know you have these expectations? First, before you communicate it, ask yourself, is this a realistic expectation I have of them before I go and be like, and then give them the opportunity to modify it or to say, well, I can't do it that way, but how about this? And be open to that. Just have an open conversation so that you kind of understand, what can happen, what can't. Or guess what? They're another person. They have ideas too. They might have a better way of doing it or a better idea. Yeah.
And sometimes we forget that we can have those conversations and we can say what we need.
Yeah. And it's important, especially if you have limitations,
Hmm.
physical limitations or anything like that, it's really important. And guess what, guys? It gets to be easy. You get to make it simple. You get to make it joyful. It's, you know, and you get to figure out, well, what makes sense, right? So the last is others' expectations on you. Some of us, because of the people pleasing part, we tend to just say yes to everything or want to meet everybody's expectations, and sometimes they're not fair, right? And so sometimes we need to have a boundary, right? I was talking to someone recently, and they always felt uncomfortable at their family gatherings because they felt judged because they didn't drink alcohol because it causes a lot of negative reactions in their body. And they said to her, "Well, you make us feel weird because you don't drink." And I said, "Sweetheart, you've got to that's about you don't have to own that one at all. That gets to be like water off the back of a duck. That's their thing. You can't control that, but you can just say, I physio you if it makes you feel better, just say, I have very, like, my body can't process it. I would do it. It's just that I can't physically drink. So it doesn't, I can't, it's not a judgment of you. And a lot of times they feel weird because they think you're judging them. Oh, you think alcohol drinking is wrong. Therefore, you must be judging me for doing it. Let that go and just say, like, I can't, I don't know, say you're allergic to it. I don't care. Right. But, but that's something that we can't own. So sometimes we just need a boundary.
Yeah.
Um, and then circumstances, again, we get to say, I can't control what actually happens in the world. Can't control it. So, you get to just kind of roll with it and just decide how you want it to, and just say, hey, all right. And then, of course, in the midst of all the busy, really just for that happy balance, you really, 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 I can't emphasize this more. How many reallys do we need here? Build in time for self-care and recovery and rest, because we're trying to double up how much we're doing. First of all, let's not do that. But second of all, let's make sure that we're putting some real fun, wonderful things that allow us to recharge. I'm not saying the things that you're doing extra that also drain you. They can be fun, but put those in the list of, you know, the active things and not necessarily the rest and recovery things. Yeah. And of course, the next two parts are I mean, they're all my favorite. Never mind. I can't even say. I was going to say this is
I
my
love
favorite.
that.
This one might be my favorite, but it's connecting, right? So by the way, all of these things that I'm talking about, everything involved in these five things to help you craft your ideal holiday season. In the end, if we look at what it's doing to you physiologically, if you were to follow all this, you're reducing inflammation, right? Psychosocial stress increases cellular inflammation. Not getting enough sleep, not getting enough rest and recovery, that increases cellular inflammation, you know? So it isn't just
All
about the food,
connected.
it's all connected, but also our social interactions are connected. And this is where one of my favorite activities to do all year round. But I discovered it during this time of the year at first. So it's always something that I'm very, very thoughtful about, especially because this time of year we're connecting with a lot of other people. And it's really about the true power in thinking the best in love rather than judgment of others. So um, really understanding that love crowds out fear.
Mm.
Oxytocin is our connection love hormone, and it shuts off cortisol, that stress hormone that increases, right? So let's lead with love. So what does that look like? Well, when it comes to the archetypical person in the world that you might encounter while you're out and about and running errands that makes you maybe in the past feel like, why is that person turning so slow? They know I need to get somewhere. Or why is that person sitting there while her kids are running around and she's going through trying to find a shirt and she's making a mess of the whole display and we can let those things get to us, right? And everybody's in a different continuum there. It might be some different example for you. Um, but the bottom line is we don't know her story. We don't know the person's story who's maybe the person driving in front of you has a frozen shoulder, or they've got a vase of flowers next to them on the seat for a dying friend. We don't know, right? And we've done that and never thought twice about it. So we don't know. So thinking the best of the situation in front of you, even if you're making up a story, what is it doing? It's changing your perception. It's not affecting the person in front of you, whether you're angry at them or not, because they have no idea.
Right.
But it's affecting you and your energy and everything, and it's affecting your joy. So, when, love thinks the best, and it's a very healthy place to be.
Mhm.
Um,
I love that. I love that so.
yeah. Yeah. And so it also applies to the people that you know very, very well, that you may be seeing in intimate settings that are those challenging family members or friends that you may be encountering. They have a story too. And you might think that because you know them better, that you are in a better position to be able to decide whether or not they should behave a certain way, but you don't. That you literally don't. And I say this with all the love in the world because who better than you think you know than your own parent. And I could say a lot of things about how I grew up and my mother, and she's no longer with us, but as she lay dying, a lot of things changed for me, and I realized that so much of her life I had no idea.
Yeah.
And even though I felt I knew. And there were her thoughts and her feelings about things and how she saw a situation that I will never, never know. And all I need to know now is she did the best with what she had. She's the
Exactly.
best she with what she had. And not to go into all of it because she was a very challenging person. Um, but but it's so important. No matter how close they are to you, you don't know the whole story, and just love them. And if you need to help them guide them away from a conversation that they always get into that tends to disrupt, be creative. In fact, get somebody to be a Confederate, go in on it with you so that when you give a signal, I'm touching my nose or pulling my ear or just they can come in and change the subject and gently and lovingly so that everybody can, there's all different ways of doing that. But um, you know, and there's one practice that I love, and this is where we're getting to the most fun thing is a lot of times we think about breathing practices and meditating practices, they're very inward focused. We're focused on what thoughts are coming in and out of our brain. We're focused on how our body feels. We're focused on our breathing in our body, and we're breathing deep into our stomach and all those types of things. This practice is opposite, breathing in and out of your heart
Yeah.
and imagining all of the people, things, joys in your life that bring you the most joy. What is it that brings you the most joy? What is it that brings you the most appreciation, the most compassion, the most care, the most love? Who are the people or the events or those things that just bring that out in you? And as you breathe in and out of your heart, thinking on those things and allowing it to fill you, imagine it just coming out of you, bubbling out like a Care Bear stare, right out of your heart. This is the heart lock-in method by the Heart Math Institute. And what you do is you just get into that breath and you start deeping, breathing slower and deeper in and out of your heart until you just get to a nice, comfortable place. And you just let yourself have these thoughts. And remember, for me, it's my giggling grandson. Like, oh my gosh, when he's happy about something, the laugh that comes out of him or the how his light, face lights up. My dinners with my dad every month, our daddy-daughter dinner dates. I've cherished those beyond anything. I remember holding my mom's hand when she was sick and we were on our way to chemo. Just cherish memories and things that make me so grateful, right? And the people that I love in my life. Um, and then as you breathe out and you've got all of this, imagine sending that joy, that beautiful feeling, and sharing it with the people in your house, sharing it with your neighbors, sharing it with your city, sharing it with your state, your country, your world. Just imagine it just going out, whatever you want to think about. Think about it, your place of worship, or thinking about your book club or your girls' night out people or whoever, right? Whatever it is. But that practice is amazing. And it actually aligns all of it brings you into a state called coherence, where your mind and your body and your spirit are all in line. So your brain waves come in sync with your heart rate variability, which comes in sync with your breath rate. And when you're doing it with other people or around other people, you sync up with them and they sync up with you. And you're literally spreading this joy. And it's changing other people around you. And it's measurable. This isn't just a woo-woo like metaphysical energy thing. This is amazing. This is amazing. We get to truly spread joy.
Ah, that is so powerful. We don't think about that, right? We don't think about something quite so simple and how powerful it can be.
It is. And one
Mhm.
of the people, I had a chance to talk to her after we did this last week. And she says, I've never done it before. She goes, but it was so crazy. I felt like this warm rush feeling, like it just was bubbling up out at me. And I was like, that's exactly how it feels, not to tell you how it feels, but it was so physiological for her. She could feel it happen. And she goes, and it stayed with me all night long, like all night. She's like, I slept great. Like it was amazing. I couldn't even believe it. Like it really was amazing. And so she's been doing it ever since. And of course, doing that, what is it doing? We'll go back to the very first thing I said with this part was oxytocin. That is our master hormone. It's anti-inflammatory. Okay. Like I'm always going to bring it back to the practical, but we also get to really enjoy this process, right? It doesn't have to be like a meal plan to get healthy. We get to do things that are wonderful. And I think the other thing is putting it all to paper. That's the last thing is making a plan. You have things you need to do. If you've got 2 hours every night, don't try to fit 6 things on your list in there, right? Do one and make sure that it doesn't impinge on your time. You know how many people say that they get so much less sleep during the holidays? Because they're pushing their bedtime later to get more and more done. Well,
Mhm.
guess what? Then your body doesn't recover. And then the next day you're more stressed. And then the things that you have to do take longer because your brain isn't working as well, right? So we're less efficient with our tasks the next day. When we get higher stress, the stress keeps us from sleeping. We try to get more done. We get less able. The third day in, we're accruing all of this sleep debt that we now can't repay. We're running out of time. we're stressing out, we're losing our joy, right? So every single thing that goes on your calendar should be matched up against that list of priorities. As you go to bed tonight, write down the things that are popping into your head that you have to do and then rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. How important are these to my values? What ones, if I absolutely had to drop them off, can they go? And let's just see what happens. It's just 1 year. Bring it back next year if you change your mind. It's
Mhm.
okay, right? And make sure that you don't compromise on your sleep, on that rest. That's also part of that healthy balance that back there is resting. Don't compromise there because your body needs to recover, needs to recover so
Mhm.
that you can go out and do the fun things the next day and the next.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I kind of feel like we're talking about holiday season and all the extra stuff, but these are so relevant for every day. Like
Yeah,
how do you craft your week? How do you make decisions around what you want that to look like? How do you craft your work calendar? How do you craft I love these ideas that you're sharing today because they're not just about the holidays. They're about life.
indeed. Yeah, they are. And every single one of these you can do all the time. And the reason why it comes up now is because it's the time of year where we're most likely to compromise on all of our good habits because but we don't have to. Yeah, we're going to add more things and things are going to look different and we're going to have to say, okay, well, some of my normal routine stuff might have to go away. Maybe I love reading my fiction book every single night to wind down. Maybe I just don't get to do that while I'm wrapping some presents. Or maybe I decide to get an audiobook and listen to it while I wrap presents instead. Or I just enjoy and listen to Christmas music or whatever.
Yeah.
And last night my husband and I, we're coordinating gift giving stuff. It's not something we normally do. He's normally listening to, a show and I'm usually reading a book and we just say, well, what do we get to do a little differently this year? And we still went to bed on time,
Mhm.
right?
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but committing on paper,
Yeah.
putting these things down, it takes that brain burden off. You're not trying, your brain is also very, very helpful. It's going to try to just keep poking you. Don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. And of course, at 2 in the morning, you're like, I'm not forgetting. And you're not going back to sleep either.
Yeah.
So let's, get on paper and then remind your brain, oh no, we've taken care of that. We've given it a space in the calendar. We're good. We don't have to worry about it. Right
Right.
before bed, have a brain dump and then rate it and then just cross things off. And then the next day and tell your brain, I'll schedule that in tomorrow. Don't you worry. I'll figure out when it's going to happen. Don't let that stress get into your sleep.
Mhm. I love that. Oh, pardon me,
Yeah.
my scratchy
So
voice.
that's what I got for you guys. It's not just for the holidays, as you said, Melissa. It's for any time. But it's super important now because this is the time where we're more likely to just, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater there.
Yeah. And I love that you broke it down so simply. I mean, so I'm excited for everyone to bring in some of these ideas. And maybe there's like one or two or three that really resonated with you. Maybe doing all five is like, ooh, I'm gonna have to work these in. Give yourself space to play around with this and see how it feels.
Yeah.
And if you don't do anything else, I would highly recommend at least leaning into the planning part and the heart, brain, body coherence piece, like really breathing in through your heart, breathing out, really experiencing the gratitude. And even doing that, like I like to do that before I start a big project or before I host a big event or whatever, simply because when you work from that space, all of the other things just seem to flow. And it's
Yeah. And it actually, that just doesn't just seem to flow. Do you know they did a study on performance on tasks when you were in coherence and not in coherence? And those who were in coherence when they entered into a project actually had a much higher performance than those that were incoherent. So that's not just a feeling. It actually is true. We actually do much, much better. All of the work that we're doing comes out better when we come at it from a different place. I think it opens up our mind. It's an open space. It's not contracting. It's
Mhm.
not, it's not heavy. It's light. I don't know how to explain it.
Mhm.
But well, I mean, I guess I just did.
Very well, I might add. Oh,
Uh,
so have you
yeah.
walked through using some of these tools for yourself and experiencing this with your family and during the holidays and then sharing this with others? What is something that you could kind of give us to just take away? What's some words of wisdom that we could just take away from this conversation?
Mm, let's see. Don't be afraid to change things up
Hmm.
and to allow yourself to have a different experience. Just because something has always been done a certain way, if it isn't working, you get to dream. You get to do it differently. Let it happen. It's not wrong, right? It's not nobody's going to come down at you and say, "Oh my gosh," and I mean if they did, I guess it's their problem, but I just don't be afraid to try it to do it differently. Look at the data. Look at what doesn't work for you. Say, "You know what? I'm going to intentionally do this differently this year." It's okay. Plan it out a little bit, reduce some of that stress. And for any of you who are interested in if you are the people, and a lot of people are who are having a hard time sleeping and having so much on your mind and all that sort of thing, I'm going to be um giving Melissa a link to my Sleep Like a Baby tips for sleeping. It gives you a little bit of a sleep routine, worksheet. And you can always, hit me up for a sleep audit if you need some help in crafting your ideal sleep routine. And that's after you can do that. You'll have an opportunity to do that after you get the sleep tips. But that's one of my most sought after little little guides for people, and it can be very, very helpful.
Oh,
And it does sort of take into account a lot of what we have talked about here as well.
beautiful. So where can people find you online?
Mostly I'm on Facebook, Stephanie Pazniokis, my Facebook group. I would love for you to join me there. It's called Be the Boss, Be Well. And it's because I think we have it in our power
Yeah.
to be well. We get to take ownership. We get to say, "Hey, this is how it's going to happen," and say, I do have agency and control and the ability to make good decisions for my body." And so I want you to be the boss. I want you to own it. I want to help you and I want to equip you to do that and to be well. And so Be the Boss, Be Well is my Facebook group. And of course, if you do get the sleep guide, you'll be part of my world. So, email, you can always respond to any of my emails and just say hi, whatever. Look, I'm a person.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing your wisdom with us today. Thank you for this very timely conversation. And for any of you who are listening and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to try those tips, please do. And don't be afraid to give feedback. We would love to hear what your thoughts are as you put some of this stuff in practice. Get in contact with Stephanie. She's an amazing human, as you know. And have an absolutely lovely holiday season.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Take care.